Now it's the time for our meditation, so I invite you to get comfortable in your chair, get things out of your lap, and just let the chair fully support you as we close our eyes and begin taking some deep breaths together, breathing in and breathing out and feeling our shoulders relax as we become still in this perfect moment. Every deep breath we take just helps our body to know that this time is our time to relax and to let go. So I invite you, see that air coming into your lungs and filling up your lungs, and then that wonderful exhale, letting go. And now I invite you, as we become more and more relaxed, to bring into your mind something that has been somewhat heavy on your heart. It's a situation that you maybe wake up thinking about. It's a concern that you have for yourself or for a loved one. Something that feels a little bit burdensome on your shoulders. And so I invite you to, in a moment of silence, just visit that feeling for a moment and find that situation you want to focus on today. Now I invite you to take that situation that is in your heart and on your mind and pretend with me that you have before you a beautiful white wooden box. And you're going to open up the hinge of that box and you're going to place this situation that is heavy on your heart into this beautiful white box. And you're going to close the lid and you're going to hinge it. And now you're going to walk with me just a few steps down a path with your white box in hand. And when you look up, you're going to see in person, in the physical, you're going to see the emanation of your guru, your master teacher. Whether it's Jesus or Buddha or Krishna, Muhammad, Mother Mary, or any other guru that you reach out to in times of concern. And you walk toward this one. Your eyes meet, and the love that you feel coming from the eyes of this one and connecting with you opens your heart wide. This one invites you to step forward and to place your white box at their feet. You do so. And now you step back once again and connect soul to soul, eye to eye, beautiful energy to beautiful energy, in such gratitude, knowing that whatever this concern is has been given to the one who is going to make it transmute for you. It's going to help you heal whatever situation that you put into the box. And so with a heart filled with gratitude, we bow namaste to this one with grateful hearts. And now we turn and walk back down the path and into this sanctuary. We were never built to suffer and struggle in our lives. We are built to play and enjoy our lives and to have fun and to leave God's work to God and to not carry things on our shoulders. So I invite you to use this practice anytime you have a concern in your heart, to just lay it down and know that all is truly well. And now we bring our focus back into the room and we say, thank you, indwelling Spirit, for guiding us on this path this morning. We're so very grateful. And so it is, and so we choose this. Amen. And whenever you're ready, just open your beautiful eyes. So I was born and raised in Texas, and I'm a native Texan girl. And you know, that whole idea of surrender, it sounds a little bit like giving up, you know, turning in the towel. It sounds like kind of like weakness. Surrender is not something that feels like it comes natural to me. We're born and raised to be independent and to do things ourselves and to, you know, be independent people. Well, back in my previous ministry, we always had this wonderful women's retreat. The women would go, there would be like 80 of us. We'd go away for 2 or 3 nights and 4 days or something. But the men, you see, the men would not call it the men's retreat. They were not falling into that. It sounded too much like surrender to them. So what did they do? But they called it the men's advance. The men had to advance while the women retreated. I always found that to be so interesting that they couldn't, you know, the women wanted to get away and retreat. We didn't want to advance and have to do anything for anybody. We were going to be cared for, right? We retreat into our little cocoons. Anyway, I just thought that was so funny. And so we're in our last week of the theme play, which has been really quite fun. So we have this affirmation we say together one more time. I play in the zone free and unrestrained. So we're talking about surrender today, and I have been using Rebecca's book that she lent me, Stuart Brown's book on play, and he has a quote in there. He's talking about Liz Goodenough. I love that name. Liz Goodenough happens to be a professor and an expert in children's play. I didn't know there was such a thing. And she says that developmentally, we all need secret spaces where we can be safely alone with ourselves to be able to adapt to the changing world. She says, find your own secret space. Find out what it is in your surroundings that prevents a sense of trust and well-being that would allow your play to emerge. She says the ability to play is there in all of us and is transformative when it is rediscovered. And it made me think about when I was a little girl. I had a grandpa that had a farm. He had 38 acres. And they were school teachers, my grandparents that retired, to raise corn and all kinds of cool stuff. And so we'd go there every Sunday. And I always had these secret places that I would map out for myself. You know, a place where I could go, that I could get away from my little brother, who was always following me around everywhere. So I would run off like right after lunch and go find my secret place. And I can remember being at home. I was very blessed as a child. I had my other grandpa was a carpenter, And he built me a playhouse that I had in my backyard when I was growing up. And I went out there and I'd make the most luscious mud pies you have ever seen. I was baking and cooking. It's funny it didn't translate into the common day, but anyway, I had a lot of fun. And so these were my secret places that I went where I could be creative. And nobody could tell me that I couldn't do what I wanted to do, right? Well, fast forward to now, it's still the same. Even though we're older, we still need our secret spaces. I know my husband had to have his place. His was out in the garage. Everybody has to have their man cave or their woman cave or whatever it is to be able to do the things that really bring us joy. Doesn't mean that we don't need our space to dream and create so that we can surrender to that moment. I believe that keeping this kind of practice alive is, especially now in this particular time, is what's keeping us sane, but it's also helping us to move through into a transformative, evolutionary time. You know, surrender can be looked at in so many different ways. When you think about it traditionally, it's defined more like as when you go to war and you put up the white flag and you give up, right? You give up to the enemy. But surrender has also definitions that are spiritual definitions, that are biblical, and I even think that surrender can come in relationship. So the spiritual definition is allowing yourself to be with what is right in front of you, what is in this moment. That's the spiritual definition. It's living in the present, right here, right now. Biblically, it means to give up your own will and subject all thoughts, words, and deeds to God, to your higher power, whatever that is. That's your goal, isn't it? But I think there's also surrender in relationships, that there's a give and a take. Now, maybe you call it compromise, but I think sometimes there comes a point at which we have to surrender our will and let our partner or our spouse do what they need to do. Spiritually, it's just like not my personal will, but your will, our higher self's will, God's will for us, whatever that is. So I want to take us to Scripture today because we're in 2 Timothy today, the second letter of Paul to Timothy, and we're in chapter 1, verse 7, where it says, "For God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and of love and of self-discipline." Well, now, we don't necessarily gravitate to that word, self-discipline. It sounds like we're having to make ourselves do something that we don't want to do. But in actuality, what Paul was trying to tell Timothy was that he needed to stir up the gift of God in himself. He needed to live the Christ teachings. He needed to know that that was expected of him. And Timothy knew that he needed to be fearless in those activities, to be fearless in expressing the Christ in and through him. And if so, if he did, he would be filled with the spirit of power and of love and of discipline. So when focusing on the Christ within, he would have everything that he needed to succeed. All things would be given to him. You see, faith leads us to see life in its fullness that is available to us, and through that Christ power we can enter into that kind of abundance, that knowing that whatever happens we're going to be provided for. There was a point in my life at which I actually realized that you can't outgive God. You give and you get back more each and every time. So our field of conquest is our own life. It's our own personal will. Our conquest is not the material world and what is going on the outside. The first work is our self-development. It's of our own overcoming fear. That's the big job for us, because no matter what happens, we're all going to be okay, aren't we? It doesn't really matter what happens to the physical. We are these magnificent beings, eternal beings, and fearless if we surrender our personal will to our higher self. So this week, I had an opportunity to listen to a podcast of Michael Singer, who I just love. He wrote The Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment. And there are some videos of him. You can just Google him and watch him. There's some that are, 20, 30 minutes long. And I was listening to him, and he was talking about, because the question from the interviewer was, Michael, tell us, how do we get through what we're living in right now? How do we look at this? How do we move through this pandemic? Because there are a lot of people in fear and unsureness in their lives. And he said, well, it's really pretty simple. He said, we live in two environments all the time. There is the outside environment, and there is the inside environment. He said, you absolutely have no control over the outside environment. The only thing that you have control of is the inside environment. What is happening in you, as you, through you, is the only thing that you have control over. He said, we need to put our focus on the inside, and in that we will maintain clarity and centeredness. He said, we don't have to let the outside environment in unless we so choose. We don't let our personal mind impact ourself. We don't let the small talk, the nagging little narrator is not the truth of us. That's the ego mind, right? The self of us is the one that's observing all of this that's going on. He always says it's like right here, This is the self. This is the truth of us. Our observer self knows what reality is, and it already knows how to adapt to it. So the whole idea of spiritual growth is to let go of the personal. And that's what we're here to learn. We're moving from ego and personal will into our higher self of being. We're learning to live more from our Christed beingness, from showing up as that. So we focus on the truth of who we are. We focus on the fact that we know we're children of God. We know exactly why we're here. We're here to express God on the planet, to be and live as Christ taught us. He says we can adapt to anything that is going on the outside world as long as we maintain that acceptance of what is. We stay centered and we stay grounded. We only have to handle this moment right here, right now, and then the next moment, right? We're staying present, and we just simply do our best. We do the best we can with the knowledge, the tools in our toolbox that we have. We do the best that we can, and what we know is that all good is still here. Irregardless of what we see going on around us, all good is still here. And quite frankly, nothing can touch the peace of your soul unless you let it. Nothing, because you're an eternal being. So that's how we know that apparent reality can't hurt us, because we are eternal beings. So he studied a lot and talks a lot about Ram Dass, and he says, use it to go to God. That's what his teacher says. These are times we learn, because tough times are when we grow the most. It's when we grow the fastest. We learn to turn things over, to lay our burdens down like we did in meditation today. So I'm not sure why I was drawn. When I'm preparing my talk, I just kind of go with what comes to me. And I was at my bookcase, and this book by Lynn McTaggart called The Bond just sort of reached out for me. And so I thought, okay, there's something in here that I'm supposed to share with you today. And so she has a chapter in her book called Surrendering to Wholeness. And she's talking about this amazing man named Orlon Bishop. Now, Mr. Bishop has taken upon himself to go into the Watts area of Los Angeles, one of the toughest parts of the city, and to teach young black gang members how to communicate with each other, with the other gangs. Quite an undertaking, you see. And what he said was that he tells each and every one of them to regard every single encounter with anyone else as a personal challenge. And this is what he tells them to say to themselves: how do I have to be for that person to be free, to be who they are? He tells them to ask that before he is in the presence of it. And Lynn McTaggart says, the reason this is important is because offering yourself as a vehicle of service to that pure experience of connection can occur with anyone, in any relationship. Once we view ourselves as part of a larger whole, we begin to act differently. When we know our oneness, we treat each other better. We live by the golden rule, don't we? We know who we are. We know how important every single person is on the planet. So she says, by removing a self-serving aim from the relationship, we stop fighting nature and we surrender to our natural impulse toward holism. Bishop coaches these young men in the art of speaking and of listening so deeply that that deep sharing builds trust between them, and it loosens their attachments that they have to their entrenched positions that they thought they had, until they see that these other people are people just like them. When there's no agenda there, he breaks down those barriers. He says they begin to understand that if they unite in creativity, they expand. They expand, and it impacts everyone around them. You see, we're all interdependent. We all need each other, and this amazing work that he is doing is healing gangs. It's healing gangs, it's healing individuals, it's healing families, because if they leave the gang world, just think what that does for the family, for the city, for the amount of violence that goes away. And you know, all it is, the whole reason that they start those things up is because there is no sense of belonging. Everybody needs a place to feel safe and to be able to be who they came here to be. And so they are attracted to that. But Mr. Bishop is breaking down those walls completely. You see, I think we're fooling ourselves if we think we can accomplish major, huge, great things all by ourselves. We've all had that experience of trying to make something happen, trying to use our personal will, trying to say, you know, it's not happening fast enough, God, I need it, I need it like yesterday, and trying to push our personal way through, and we know that doesn't usually work. But the moment that we begin to surrender and let go of it and turn it over, a shift takes place in our consciousness, and then things do become possible. Sometimes that help comes from other people, and sometimes it just comes through an act of grace. I don't know about you, but I've had multiple times in my life when I tried to do that, tried to push something through, tried to make it happen. So how is it that we get to this place of surrender? How is it that we can start working through that and be more of these Christed beings that we came to be? Well, we start, first of all, by being okay with touching the pain that we're feeling. It's okay to have pain. We just need to move through it. We don't want to live there, and it's not going to end us, but we have to allow ourselves to feel the pain. We have to face our fears and not let it paralyze us. We have to just stop when something freaks us out, and breathe, slow down, pray, use our mantras, meditate, do whatever it is that brings you back to the peace that you are. And then we have to allow those little glimpses of hope, you know, that we catch every now and then, even when we're in a doldrum. We can, what if up? What if such and such happened and this was allowed to unfold? So we can create glimmers of hope in our own consciousness by paying attention to that when we're discouraged. It's important also that we be loving instead of resenting. We need to consider all sides, just like the guys in the gangs. Consider everybody's view and everybody's side. Everybody has things that they're going through. We also have to release the past and let it go. We can't know anything, that's not going to help anything in the present moment, but it's going to help us learn from the past. We let it go and we say, thank you for that little lesson, but I'm moving on to bigger and better things now. And then we need to trust in the goodness of life. We need to know without a doubt that when we concentrate on the truth that is in us, that is going to unfold the good for us every single moment. And then we need to live in the present moment. We need to know that right here, right now, everything is good. Everything is fine right here, right now. It's when we start thinking about the future or dredging up the past, that's when we start to feel bad. So living in the present moment. So there's always hope. There's always good stuff happening. I can tell you for a fact that this cocooning time is helping because I'm learning how to cook. I've been feeding my family. And I saw my son have a couple of extra servings the other day. And I'm like, this is like a first for me. It's a new experience. My husband was always the cook in the family. So the time to cocoon has given me time to get out the cookbook, learn some new things, and I'm great. I'm so grateful that I can surrender into that. Being at home, spending time with myself, and being okay with it, I'm being fine with it. I'm learning to enjoy that time. So this last week in our book club, in Ellen Davenport's book, Hell in a Hallway, Light at the Door, there was a great chapter about the power of prayer in there. And there was listed in there, if you're really ready to surrender, if you're really ready to let go and let God be in charge of your life, she has 2 prayers, and she calls them dangerous prayers, right? So are you ready? The first one, reveal what needs to be revealed and heal what needs to be healed. Now that's powerful, because it means to me what we're going through already as a planet. Things are coming up, they're being revealed. We don't necessarily like the looks of them, but they're also being healed. On some level of consciousness, everything is coming up to be revealed and to be healed. But when we ask for it in our personal lives, you see, it's helping us get rid of our personal will. We're saying, it's okay, God, whatever you bring is all right with me. And then what happens is we'll be showered with all kinds of divine ideas about how we're going to move through it. That's how co-creation works. We let go and we let God be in charge, and we just work along with it. Pay attention to Spirit. The second one, this one's really powerful. Lead me where you need me and speak to me in ways I cannot possibly misunderstand. Now, when you say that one, you're ready. You're ready. You are in spiritual maturity. You're in a trust mode. You are having a willingness on your heart to turn things over and let the universe bring to you whatever it is that you need in this moment. I think it's extremely powerful. It means you're willing to ask for guidance and then actually do what the guidance suggests. Spirit's directing us, and when we're awake and alert and we're in this kind of frame of consciousness, it comes, the signs come to us in all sorts of interesting ways. Through emails, texts, billboards, a song, a dream. The guidance can come, but you have to be awake and alert and paying attention. So do you get the clarity of the ask of these two particular prayers? These prayers are for those who mean business, who are ready to say, okay, God, whatever it is you have for me, I'm ready. Just make sure I don't misunderstand. Make sure that I have the clarity. Because this is a true collaboration with God. And this is how we move forward, because we're basically setting an intention. So the other thing that we talked about in Artist's Way this week, which is our Tuesday class with Bunny. Bunny was talking about how she's working on her licensed Unity teacher work. And one of the things that she had to do was she had to create a covenant. Well, a covenant is your intention for how you're going to show up spiritually, what you're going to do, what your work is going to be. And so I want to read you what it says in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. A covenant is an agreement. A covenant of the Bible represents the principles or rules by which we are able to gain our true spiritual heritage and possess the riches of the kingdom of God. We must be true to the spirit within. If we follow false gods, that is, material things, we will find these to be powerless. We must be true to our I am nature if we are to reap the benefits of the I am consciousness. God has promised all his children perfect health, prosperity, peace, light, and happiness. But it is necessary for each of us to abide by the spiritual laws. If we would gain the blessings of spirit, we must keep faith in God and seek him diligently. Then his good will be ours. We must keep faith in our own spirituality if we hope to use our spiritual powers and handle spiritual substance. Well, you see, this is how the Fillmores set about creating unity. This is what the Fillmores did. They created their own covenant. I'm going to read it to you. We, Charles Fillmore and Myrtle Fillmore, husband and wife, hereby dedicate ourselves, our time, our money, all we have, and all we expect to have, to the Spirit of Truth, and through it to the Society of Silent Unity. It being understood and agreed that the said Spirit of Truth shall render unto us an equivalent for this dedication in peace of mind, health of body, wisdom, understanding, love, life, and an abundant supply of all things necessary to meet every want without our making any of these the object of our existence. In the presence of the conscious mind of Christ Jesus, this 7th day of December, 1892. They were very clear about their intention for how they were going to let go and let God guide their lives and create unity. It is possibly the best example of living in a place of surrender, living from that place of surrender and letting go. Okay, it's time for a little humor. There's a lady telling a story about how she is trying to disconnect her mother's telephone, and she gets a hold of this customer service person who says, I can't help you with that because it's in your dad's name. He has to be the one that fills the paper out. It didn't matter to her that I told her that my dad passed away 40 years ago. She still insisted that he had to be the one to close the account. And then a solution hit me, she said. I said, if I stop paying the bill, you can turn off the service, right? And she said, yes, but it'll ruin his credit. Anyway, I thought that was cute. I've kind of had that same experience myself, so I totally resonate with that. Today we're going to close with Michael Singer in his beautiful book, The Surrender Experiment. At some point, there's no more struggle, just the deep peace that comes from surrendering to a perfection that is beyond your comprehension. Eventually, even the mind stops resisting, and the heart loses the tendency to close. The joy, excitement, and freedom are simply too beautiful to give up. Once you are ready to let go of yourself, life becomes your friend, your teacher, your secret lover. When life's way becomes your way, all the noise stops, and there is a great peace. And that is my wish for each and every one of you. God bless. Now is the time in our service when we get to give from our good, and I want to thank you in advance for all the beautiful prosperity, all the gifts that are coming in the mail, through the PayPal, through the Breeze software, all the ways in which you're dropping off money at the church. It's so sweet, and I'm so grateful. So we're going to bless our gifts and tithes with our blessing. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, that this is so, and so it is. Namaste, everyone.